All right. Welcome, one and all, to the first Midnight's Lair stream. I've got my guests here, Jeff Mejia, Francois, Jim, and Travis Showman. Jeff, how did I do on the last name?
Mejia.
Mejia. Sorry,
Mejia.
forgot
It's all
Spanish.
right. No problem.
There you go.
You
Thank you
didn't do
very
Medina, so that was good.
much. Yeah, that
Been
could get
done.
in. All right. And the topic for tonight, as advertised, is going to be challenges in midlife and beyond about from gaming and what benefits we find from gaming. And, what do we find keeps us from gaming? What things do we, what enjoyment do we derive from gaming? Stuff like that. So I'll open the floor with, okay, guys, whoever wants to answer, what is your biggest impediment to getting in gaming? I mean, I guess most of us are gaming online or in person, obviously one or the other. Which one do you find you do more right now?
Well, I'm
I
going to try and start answering if that's okay with people.
Sure.
Basically, um, I got really lucky when it comes to how much gaming I can do because I personally don't have much that prevents me from going so, but I do have to face a lot of challenges when it comes to um, being able to get people together. Scheduling, especially, is something that's always has to be taken into account. Everybody has lives, everybody has different conditions, everybody has responsibilities. The older you get, the more that becomes true. Oftentimes, you're going to be looking at their responsibilities from your family, responsibilities from different life events, or sometimes just plain old choices, life choices. Like, do you want to spend more time gaming, or do you want to uh, especially if you're a celibate person and you would like to get more into dating, you have to consider how much time you're going to want to put into that. So there's always this good old choice as do I have a want a night
Want a
with
girlfriend
my
or you want a
friends?
game? Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes that is the choice.
You need to
But
find a gamer to date.
yeah,
That,
it's
that's the best of all. Or find a girl and
If
turn her into a gamer. That's what I did.
easier
Um,
said than done.
hmm
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
they're they're a lot more prevalent now, though.
Oh,
this is
true.
true. Yeah, yeah.
A lot more prevalent.
Um, I know way back in when I was in high school, I guess it would have been about 79, 80. I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, and there was this girl at high school that loved Lord of the Rings. Talked a lot about Lord of the Rings. I talked to her about
Yeah.
D&D, and D, and it's like she looked at me like, "Who's this nerd? Who's this weirdo?" So D&D was too nerdy for the Lord of the Rings girl, but
Yeah.
that was a long time ago. Now there are more girls in the
Yeah.
games, and I do most of my gaming online. Although I'm in one live action group playing a old school classic Traveler.
Oh,
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah,
Yeah. Well,
playing with
you're
a
you,
relatively young guy who could not get his head around the fact that it wasn't like D&D. When you want to try and take on 10 armed guys when you're only armed with a bed, it's not going to work out in your favor.
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, those old games were a lot more brutal than modern D&D.
oh for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hell,
Modern D&D.
In Traveler, you could literally die in character creation.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Actually, more often than not, you did.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like you're getting your character ready, and you're dead. Start again.
Or he became so old he was useless. Yeah, one or the other.
Yeah, yeah, one or the other. Uh, I know
But you
the.
know, there was one thing about Traveler that I loved. I even equated that I use it in life.
Okay.
The
Okay.
difference between intelligence and education.
Yes.
Yeah,
mhm.
Hmm.
You
yeah,
know, a lot of
Yeah,
people they split it up, and I was like, that's genius.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just the realization of it that yeah, it's not necessarily because I've met both. I've met everybody knows these people who are just naturally bright, but they don't have a formalized education, and everybody knows the formalized
yeah.
education person who can't survive on their own.
No.
for whatever reason,
Well,
So
Yeah, education is basically facts, and intelligence is basically what to do with them.
yeah,
yep.
yeah. So Traveler did help me with that. Otherwise, yeah, it was the game besides D&D
Hmm.
Yeah.
early on.
Well, I've always been more of a sci-fi fan than a fantasy fan. And when I was first heard about Dungeons and Dragons, there was a game book in the library. It was all about war games. It had all these, classic war games, Wooden Ships and
Okay.
Iron Man and some various other games that I can't remember the name of. And then there was one chapter on Dungeons and Dragons, and it just fascinated me. I had to find someone who played this, and I didn't really know anybody. And then I found out they sold books to hobby stores. I went down to the hobby store. Now it's all saved up, gonna buy the player's handbook for Dungeons and Dragons. And I was in there and I saw this little black box with a red stripe. Mayday, Mayday. This is the free trader Beowulf. It's like, oh, what's this? So I,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, that's
I bought that instead of D&D, and it would shrink wrap little black box, and as soon as I got it at the store, I opened the box, and it was like 3 books, and what the hell kind of game is this? But
yeah, but there's an
eventually,
awful lot in those three little books.
oh yeah, yeah, it really is. It really is a spark to the imagination.
Well, you needed that because otherwise you're like, where the hell are the pictures? There's no
Hmm.
pictures. Where's the pictures? It's like,
Yeah, there were a couple line drawings, I think,
yeah.
of a guy named Jameson. I think it was the only character illustration. He looked like a 17th century fop of some sort,
Yeah,
a 17th century musketeer or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Travis, Jeff,
Yeah.
Josh, Jim, what do you guys? What's your biggest impediment? Do you play mostly online, or do you play mostly face to face? Or if you're not playing face to face, what's keeping you from getting together with people? Or if you're online, what are your biggest challenges right
Mine, I would have to say, is just hours in the day. I have a hobby problem where I learn to do everything all the time. So I can't just commit to one thing anymore. But I also, now it's every other month because it's a different game. I was every month going to a live action role playing game for the weekend, and now it's every 2 months. And it's like 5 hours away from here. So I have to drive to
now?
it. Um, Plus, I
That's a
work
long haul.
full time, and but the LARP is the only in-person gaming I get to do anymore. I was playing before I moved back to the Pittsburgh area. I was playing live or in person with the D&D group in Maryland, but yeah, and now they're 200 miles away. So
Yep.
I don't love online gaming because I sit here all day at work and then I have to sit here to have fun, and it feels wrong.
It's a bit much. Yeah.
Yeah.
5 hours, that's quite the commitment. I
Yeah.
myself, I have a LARP of Vampire the Masquerade that happens in Quebec City, and I live in Montreal, so it's like a 2 hours, 2 hours and a half drive,
Mhm.
depending on the traffic. And even then, I was like, that's that's a drive.
Yeah.
I can't
Just to play
imagine double
vampire.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We used to have people from Canada come down to our one in Ohio every month just
Oh,
to play with us. It's a post-apocalyptic zombie thing. It's
oh,
still going on. It's been going on for like 15 years, and it's nationwide. They have like 15 to 20 chapters.
oh,
Wow.
that's pretty nice.
Seen pictures that you posted back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, my post-apocalyptic Ghostbuster Super Saiyan.
So
I'm
Jeff.
totally. I guess mine's totally different because I love playing online. I
Oh
just do.
yeah.
It's just yeah. It's for me. I guess. Well, number one thing is the time. I don't have time a lot to do the in person. Let's all get together kind of deal. When I was single, bazillion years ago, 20 plus years ago, um, that's all I did. That's all we had. You know,
Hmm.
I was living in Hawaii, and Hawaii, many people don't know it, but it's a gaming nexus.
Oh, is it?
And the reason it is because you have Air Force Base, Army Base, Marine Base,
Hmm.
Naval Base, you know, Pearl Harbor, Fort Shafter, Kaneohe Air Base. You have all these different bases with all kinds of guys in them going in and out, 2-year enlistments, 3-year, wherever they're stationed,
Hmm.
and you'll always find gamers.
Yeah, a
You'll
lot
find,
of military people are gamers, I found.
yeah, you'll find gamers from Oklahoma to Texas to, and then the local guys from Hawaii, and everybody just, they just get along. It's a great, you know, the army guys, the military guys are just happy that somebody is gaming and
Hmm.
somebody has a house to game in. And so when I first got married, I mean before that I was gaming all the time every weekend, all of that. When I first got married, we would have a group of military guys, and it was easier for my wife to accept military guys into the house because we had babies and all of that.
Hmm.
But when we moved back to California to my home, it was a lot harder because you don't know who you're getting,
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
and you don't know of the different religious bents, of the different
Hmm.
ideological bents,
Yeah,
Hmm.
politics and all that.
politics. Yeah, and
It's
with the
tricky.
military, everybody has politics, so of course they do. But in the military, you're already trained right there. We don't talk about that.
You keep your mouth
Or in,
shut. Yeah.
You
or in the
can't.
army, you just keep your, yeah, or you're in the navy or whatever. That's your bent.
Hmm.
It's like in uh, literature, where the military is always the arm that isn't getting into the politics. And if they see things going too far one way or whatever, they just stay clear of it until they're summoned. And
Hmm.
that's how it kind of is in life. It's really weird. But anyway, um, so having a bunch of guys and girls or whatever, people that I don't know or she doesn't know that we just met on a via phone call or
Hmm.
on the board at the game store isn't something I could do anymore.
No, it's hard to vet them properly to make
Yeah.
sure that these are people you want anywhere near your family. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was living with me and my roommates or whatever, and we got the jerk, we could get rid of the jerk, no problem.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the
But
stakes
now
were lower.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So then, okay, well, it just became family. I was lucky enough to have 3 boys.
Ah.
So that was my gaming group, my kids, you
Hmm.
know, and they were growing up in between uh, fourth edition and fifth edition. Okay. And I was in this weird area where I loved second edition. This is for D&D. I loved second edition to death. And then third edition came out, so I was like, okay, I'm not going to be one of those guys. I'm going to go with it. Let's see it. So, spending money, buying books, 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 books. Oh, 3.5.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, what the hell? I just spent uh,
Couple
not
hundred
a
dollars.
bazillion dollars, but a couple of hundred, and my wife's like, you sure you need that book? And I'm like, oh yeah, honey, I kind of do in order to, because we were just starting out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I had that exact experience. It really bothered me.
yeah,
It's,
and
uh,
so that totally ended me for D&D, but Pathfinder happened, and
Mm.
Pathfinder had the groups that you had in the game stores. I can't remember what they called it, but
Pathfinder Society, wasn't it? Yeah. Or Spore Society.
Society, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And it was kind of like Raven's Loft back when I was single. We had Raven's Bluff,
Yeah.
D&D and all that. So I took the boys to game stores and on the weekends and stuff. And my wife was never against D&D, but she never played, which was
Hmm.
it was okay. She'll paint miniatures, no problem. She'll make spaghetti while we're all playing, great. You know, but it just wasn't her thing.
Hmm.
And so anyway, I take the boys around, and we did that. But then as they grew up, one or two stayed with it. A couple, my other one just kind of went off in the video game thing.
Hmm.
So that all ended. But then virtual started coming up, And as virtual came up, I found a way to game again because I wasn't gaming. And I got to tell you honestly, the best campaign I ever had. And it was a European campaign.
Wow.
I had gotten struck by a vehicle and I was out for like a year and a half,
Mhm.
on my
Ooh.
back. So I was home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or, 10 o'clock in the morning, whatever. I hooked up with a, gr- a group with a guy from England, a guy from Luxembourg, a guy from Macedonia, a guy
Wow.
from Greece, uh, a couple other two guys from England, and it was fantastic because it was a whole different way of playing. There was different attitude, there was different worldview, there was different, and we did a game for a couple of years and it went really good. Then I had to go back to work, so we I'm still friends with them on Facebook and all of that, but it's never the same. But for that time, it was like wow, and I just really enjoyed the video thing.
Sure.
And now I can play intermittently. I can't always do it, but like I do it with Dicey Tales because I'm selling Dicey Tales. So it's
Yeah.
promotion and it's play testing, and my wife can understand that and say, okay, he's not just off gaming, he's working on the project because I
It's
don't make
business.
a ton of money, but I make enough to take her out to dinner every once in a while and let's go to the movies. Hey, Dicey Tales is paying for this, or let's go to
Mhm.
Carmel.
That's
Yeah,
got to be the cheat code. If it's for work, it's okay.
yeah. So this worked for me, you
Mhm.
know, and I don't really miss the other stuff because I'll still see you guys,
Yeah.
you know. And I started doing the thing that if we game, let's look at each other's faces, not because I need to see you, but when we give expressions and stuff, it
It
works for
helps.
me. It helps. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm sorry, that was my long story,
No,
but
that's fine. That's
that
fine.
was my twist on it. And because a lot of people, when I see it online, not too many people care for virtual tabletop. It's a necessity that
For some people, it is.
you know, and for
Mhm.
me, it was the way I like.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And Josh, how about you?
Yeah, but it's always been a little bit of a mix. I did live act or well table interactions early on, and then but I always had a little bit of a fascination with playing online. And one of the things I had noticed as I got more and more into it was it offered opportunities that you just couldn't get in person. Like finding everyone who could be on schedule to play was a lot easier online because everyone just literally just sits down right at their, right at their desk or right on even some cases on their couch. I had a player once who used to go on his back yard, and he had one of those those big swings, like those big wooden swings like the gliding or gliders.
Glider slings. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he used to set his laptop up right in front of him, bottle of scotch, and he was good to go. So it had that little bit of that, you know, it had a little bit of that ease of use where didn't have to worry about everyone getting together because my tabletop experiences in general, it always has that initial problem where you get everyone down, everyone sits at the table, and then while you're sitting at the table, everyone's taking their time. Everyone's kind of pulling out their dice. Well, how's things been going? How's work? How's kids? Even when
Sure.
we're younger, it's like people are talking about their favorite TV show or talking about have you seen this movie or have you played this card game or and
Tabletop. Yeah.
Hang on, I'm
right
finished with my
tabletop.
slice of pizza.
But with the online, a lot of times it seemed like as soon as people jumped into the chat room, got everything ready, it was almost like it was time to go because a lot of the people who are interacting, they talk to each other all the time via chats or whatever. So they're wanting to use that time to play. They want to play. This is our time to do it.
Yeah. They've gotten it all out of their systems. So.
Right. And it's I can't pick a favorite because I love being in person to see the people's reactions when stuff's going on. I love to throw a puzzle at somebody, and then when they solve it in a way that I couldn't even imagine, I get excited. I like it, and you kind of get it a little bit. But one of the things I do like about digital is the amount of preparation I can do and the amount of everything I can do and put into it is a little bit better. Like I love minis and I love terrain and I love doing that, but I can't put the energy into building entire castles and entire dungeons and that for those one or two moments that will be in a game. Don't get me wrong, I would love to sit there and make these grand setups for them because I love to play with those, but it's just not really feasible unless that's what you do for a living.
Yeah.
So
Do you mean to say you're not Critical Role?
well, they don't even. I mean, all I've watched, they never really even use. They're more theater of the mind. But of course, But
I think that was Damage in 20. I might have gotten those mixed around.
But and don't get me wrong. Like I said, if I had the time to do it, if that was my full time, I didn't have the responsibilities, whatever, I'd do it. I'd love because I do love that kind of creation. I start how many projects. I have boxes of miniatures I still need to paint. I have terrain I need to paint them. I have, you get all this and it builds up and builds up. But when it comes to the digital stuff, I put together digital encounters that I've tried on the tabletop and don't come off as well on the tabletop. For example, it was a 5th edition game. They got to the final boss, which was, Evil Wizard Boo-Hoo, and they smacked him pretty hard. They took down his initial hit points. Well, gamer, so I take inspiration from everything. I took an inspiration from boss fights from video games. So after they got through his initial amount of hit points, boom, he transforms and he turns into this giant head. So on the virtual tabletop, I replace his mini with this massive face that's right in their screen. And then on the other side of the screen, they kept hearing the shaking, and they're firing spells, hitting the face with arrows, trying to stay away because every round he would do like an engulf attack. If it's basically a giant grapple, right? If you get too close, it'll bite you and suck you up. Well, because they were taking too long, I put a giant arm that came through the side of the screen, and then another arm on the other side. So basically, they had to keep. It became a very strategic fight because, okay, we have to get close enough to hit, but also get back out of the way because if we're too close, these things will grab us. And but that type of encounter, when I ran something very similar on the table, it wasn't as impressive because people are looking at my little prop and they're like, like, oh, that's interesting. But when I was doing it on the screen, when you have this big, the image I used was Pazuzu from Exorcist. So that big Pazuzu face right in the middle of their screen, and rotating the mini, so all they see is it rotates every once in a while and everything. It got a little bit more of a visceral response online than it did at the tabletop. But I like doing that. I like using the audio effects because you play them in a back channel, nice and low, and it gives you more. It gives you more tools to create an experience, which again you could do in person. But the prep work to do it in person is a lot. It's a lot more. So eventually, when you're hooking up the audio board, sitting out laptop, tablets, and doing everything, people start to look. It's like we are playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like that is what we're doing.
You're not DJing, right?
That's one thing I've noticed. Like even my in-person game that I had to leave when I moved. Everybody is on a tablet or on their phone the entire time. They cannot live without D&D Beyond.
Oh my god! Do I have to say something about?
I'm the only one at the table who used pen and paper, including the DM.
I feel your pain.
Well,
That's the thing. When it comes to online, I absolutely like the convenience of everything because you don't have to smudge your sheet all over. You don't have you have so many tools to keep tracks of things, and it can be a lot easier to keep tracks. But when you're alone at a table, and because I do both online and in person, and there are pros and cons to both. But for the sake of that point specifically, when you're the only person with a character sheet, and you have to wait after that one person who's for some reason Roll20 decided it would take about 30 more seconds to land a roll, any kind of roll, and you're just waiting until eventually the servers uploads, and then sometimes the servers crash, and you're just well, I have a dice here. I can just lend it to you when you can. You know what your bonus is. Can you please do the roll? So yeah, we had some experiences, and then at some point, a group of my friends started a game with the explicit goal of nobody was going to bring technology to the game because we wanted to see each other's faces and not just have our eyeballs glued to some piece of technology.
Well, I'll own up to it. When I playing live, I usually bring my computer with me, and when I was running a D&D game for some friends I made locally at the library, I would always have all my stuff on the computer because I just found it more convenient. And I had it all set up so I could do the rolls, I could do had all the character sheets, all the monster stats. I didn't have to flip through a book. I was quick with it. I wasn't sitting there trying to figure out how to roll the dice. But
Right.
yeah, one of the things I like about the online, you've probably mainly what's it called, the Roll20 app
Yep.
most, and I find it very convenient, fairly intuitive, and it's just hit a button, your dice are rolled, you set up your macros, attack with the warhammer two-handed. You have it all set up in advance, and boom, boom, boom. You don't have to reference anything outside of the app. So I find that very convenient. Although between the two, I do prefer face-to-face gaming. I find with my the games I play online, we generally try and meet up every few months, go to a pub and have a beer, and talk about gaming, not actually doing gaming, or talk about whatever, latest movies or TV shows or whatever. And I find most of the people I made friends with gaming out here in Calgary. I moved from Montreal. They're much younger than me, most of them, and so you have the video game mindset. They all grew up playing video games. They never knew a life where video games didn't exist. So for them, virtual tabletop is the way to go. And sitting around a table rolling dice is just a little quaint, I think. But some of them do like it. I don't want to, paint them all with the same brush, but
No.
I just find the tabletop also more convenient. It's gave me 11:30. Yeah, it's 11:20. I guess I'll start my computer. You finish at 3 o'clock. Time for a nap. You don't have to go home. You don't have to travel anywhere.
Yeah.
Speaking.
You kind of pointed out something there too. One of the distinct advantages with the tabletop, and Jeff had mentioned it as well, is you have the ability to play with people who geographically are nowhere near you.
Oh yeah.
The mainstay group that I play with, I have a player in Florida, I have one in Louisiana, one in Michigan. One of the last groups I played with had a nice long campaign. 3 of them were in Australia, which my life, if I was playing table, face to face, the chances I ever get a chance to play with anyone from Australia or Europe or Asia or any of these other places would be, outside of maybe a gaming convention, right, would be like almost impossible. But with the digital interactions, with digital tabletops, it's like, hey, where are you? And like Jeff pointed out, you start playing with people who from other cultures and who've learned to play D&D and perhaps a little bit of a different way. You start to see that the game is really, for lack of a better term, really, really big. Like there's no one definitive way to play. And sometimes when you play with those people, you start picking up things that you don't do, and then you spread them to people, especially when you switch over to tabletop, or if you're doing live action or table play, you start to use those habits. It's like, oh, then that's an interesting way to do that. I've never thought about doing that way. I never thought, and you kind of, it spreads almost like a virus a little bit. You start showing them to look at the game in a way that they maybe never looked at. And fortunately, we have that ability now. Like, if you would go back when we played, when I played D&D in high school, if you'd have said, hey, one day you're going to be playing with people from Australia or playing somebody from South Korea, or you're going to be playing somebody from even Africa, I'd have been like, I guess, maybe. I don't, it just seemed like almost an impossibility. But now, anytime you throw, especially when you're using the digital tabletops like Roll20 or any of those, you go looking for a group, you have no clue where these people are going to come from, other than the fact that you put up a time zone that you like to play in. So,
yeah, and if they're desperate enough, they'll take the time zone. You really want to play? Okay, let's do it.
I did run some games in a West Marches server for a while, and one of our guys was in the Philippines, and I'm in the Eastern time zone. Like, it was the middle of the night when he would get on. Yeah, he'd get on in the middle of the night and play.
Wow.
Philippines, isn't that like 8 hours away, if not more?
12, I believe.
Oh my lord.
Yeah.
It's the exact opposite side of the world.
That's dedication.
It might actually have been ahead of you, like in the future. He might have been playing in the future, which I don't know.
Yeah, he might have been playing the next day.
Yes.
I know I've got a couple games where I play with people from Quebec and Ontario, and they're Eastern time zone, and I'm in Calgary, which is mountain, and they're all, oh yeah, it's getting late, time for bed. Whatever. Like, what are you talking about? It's only 8 o'clock.
Yeah, and it's
like
like
10 or 11, getting close to midnight.
Yeah, wrapping your head around that is, I mean, it was funny because I remember back in the day, the only way that we knew anybody other than us being whoever you are, was Dragon Magazine.
True.
You get. There's a letter from Portugal. The Portuguese play this. What a trip! How do they play this? It's like Brazil. It's like, oh, they speak Portuguese there. Huh, okay. I didn't know that, but you learn things and you're like, wow, where are you from? But that was it. And then when the internet came along, it came to be so international. I mean, how in the world did we get together, Eric?
Oh, well, we got together through the podcast, the original podcast, and then the boards.
And the Midnight Slayer.
Yeah, exactly.
The board? Yeah, it was on the board.
Yeah.
And I was just looking around at boards, and I saw one said Midnight Slayer, and I went on that, and all of a sudden I'm talking to people from Canada and from
England,
Quebec, and England, and not that Quebec is not part of Canada, or it might be. I don't know. That's not my thing. That's you guys.
Still is for now, but they're trying to. They're still trying to make their own country, but they're still part of Canada for now.
Yeah, it's it was just crazy. It was really neat that the internet allowed us to do that, because you totally wouldn't. I made so many friends. I've met maybe 4 or 5 of them, but I have dozens of online friends, and some of them to the point where I've actually, interacted outside, doing things for and getting favors from, other people in other ways, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it is cool, and with a lot of us from the old lair, I mean, we retain a fondness for each other, as evidenced by most of the people who are here today. I think the only one who's never really had a chance to go to the old lair was Francois. He wasn't even aware of its existence, probably, but the rest of us all from the old lair. But that's the thing.
You can blame Josh for that. He's the one who turned me on to the Midnight Slayer.
Oh well, Josh, it's all your fault. But yeah, I mean, I find that for myself, as I get older, the biggest problem is mostly time. Like Travis, I have a hobby compulsion. And between, let's see, photography, playing guitar, miniature painting, role playing, I have too many things, and sometimes it's hard to know what to do, when to do it, and what to focus on. Having ADD doesn't help, but that's one of my biggest impediments. And well, obviously, as we get older, health concerns, right? So
yeah.
Well, I don't have too many hobbies. I've been doing gaming for a little over 40 years. I think I might stick with that.
Yeah, me too. But I've always been into new stuff,
Yeah. No, I do some reading. I dabble a bit in writing. But gaming is my main hobby away from
Mhm.
vegetating in front of the TV. I don't know if you call that a hobby, but
I find I do that way too much.
yeah, me too. Actually, it's YouTube that sucks up a lot of my time. But
Hmm.
I'd rather be gaming. But
Well,
you know,
now,
it's
thanks to this, you
scheduling.
can suck other people's time up.
Yeah,
Time wise, I think the main advantage. Well, there are many advantages to doing this online, but uh, myself residing in Montreal, one of the minute things that we don't necessarily pay a lot of attention of is how much time do you save on commute? When
Mm,
you've had a like really, regardless if it was a bad or a good game, a session that lasted anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, 8 if you decided to go all in, or 12 depending on how much commitment you did. Sometimes you finish at hours at like it's midnight, 1 in the morning, and you're still not home, but then you have to work tomorrow or you have a day tomorrow. Like if you're online, you can just
yeah.
like, well, thank you for the session, everyone. You log off and then you go straight to bed, or you go do whatever else that you want to do. Or in like crowded places like in Montreal where there's very little to no parking, you go to your friend's house and it's
mm,
downtown, and there's no place to park on the same street. There's 4 different signs that tells 6 different rules as to how you can park, when and where. Then you're just like,
Yeah,
I'm either going to get the subway and risk it, or I'm going to go risk a ticket or something. And just like all of these things that are outside of the game that you don't have to bring in when you're doing online. And I think more than that, there was also, when back in 2020 when everything started, we started to um, see issues in my gaming groups where we wouldn't be having the time if it was for everybody to commute in, because we weren't living too far apart in comparison to other gaming groups. Like for example, I wouldn't be having people from from the United States, for example, or from other cities. But still, like when you don't have the means to travel too much, and just 45 minutes of commute can sometimes be a little bit impeding if you have a fast-paced life. um, then sometimes saving on that 45 minutes, or if you have engagements and so forth, it's so much more important to be able to like maintain a good balance, that sometimes online was the only answers. And in 2020 we started to convert to an online format because we wanted to be able to game with other people that weren't always going to be around Montreal, that were going to
mhm.
be moving around, they were going to be out of country and so forth. And then COVID happened and we were like, oh, okay.
Now we have
And
to,
then
yeah.
yeah, now we had to, and because we had already started the conversion, like we were all of my gaming group really big fans of doing face to face, because there's always this like interaction, this connection that is kind of hard to attain in an online environment. Because when you're online, you're staring at a screen, and then there's this connection where it's hard to chain up things you want to say slash do, because another person starts on an idea. Sometimes there's a lag input or something like that, and then
Mhm.
two people start speaking together, and then you have to like make way or take way. um, but once you get that conversion done, once you start to find your rhythm again, the advantages of online really come to shine as to, like Josh said, all of the tools, all of the creativity you can deploy. The Sometimes when you're running especially heavy theme campaign, like with this, there's an element of stress, of element of aura that you really want to put up. It is possible to deploy all of this and not really look like a tryhard. Or sometimes if you're not a crafts person like myself, I don't craft at all. I use a lot of theater of the mind. I use a lot of metaphors and imagery whenever I either describe my character's actions or when I DM myself. And it's always I don't it's very low prop whenever I run anything. But like with the advent of online tools, the number of things you can deploy that require basically just the effort to know how to operate those buttons and functions. But other than that, you don't necessarily have to fully create from scratch. And then you arrive at with this piece of thing is like everybody's gonna recognize the effort and appreciate it, but at the end of the day, it's not a piece of art, and you're just like, that's it's high school level arts, and it's
yeah.
we appreciate that, but it's not intimidating me in any fashion.
You know, Francois, and that kind of brings up something else that's brand new, to me anyway, is the whole AI thing,
Oh my
Oh
lord.
yeah.
right? You start talking about the AI, and especially in regards to art.
Hmm.
I can't. I personally cannot draw a stick figure. I would love to be able to do this. I
Hmm.
can't do that. But if there's a way to me for me to do it on AI and make it look halfway decent, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And yet, if I want to put it up and have somebody see it, you'll get a ton of detractors.
Yes, you will.
How dare
Yeah.
you do that? That's
You're stealing from
costless. How
artists.
can you? Yeah, you're stealing it. And I'm like, okay, never mind. you know,
Well,
it's like,
Well,
Yeah.
look, I mean,
the,
just for example, the title card and the background on our shot here, I couldn't have done those as fast as I did without AI. They both were pumped out through AI. They look fairly decent, I think, and so I was like, "Oh, it'll have to do," and I was actually kind of happy with the result.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with games. We've recently discovered for P. Mikey from the boards, he's started running a superhero game again recently using Mighty Protectors, and he discovered AI to generate his character art. He had been using like City of Heroes to do it, and then he found out he could take the City of Heroes things he was generating and pump them through an AI, and they came out spectacular. So he's like, "Yeah, I'm in," and
Yeah.
yeah,
I've used
he's
AI
actually
to
not,
make.
but yeah, he said that's just faster, and I don't have less time investment.
Yeah.
yeah,
I've
in
used,
my in I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I was gonna say I've used AI to make a lot of character portraits and images. One of my friends used it to make, a for it wasn't quite a dungeon, but basically a map, a gaming map, with rooms and doors and everything, and the square grids, 1 inch square. It came out pretty good. But yeah, I've had a lot of success. Sometimes, you're ready in the prompt and it's hit or miss, and it'll show up an image, and how the hell did they get that, or what I said? And I made one recently for my traveler character, and it's like, oh wow, that's cooler than I'll ever be.
Yeah.
well, personally, when it comes to AI and whatever images and other things that you can generate with it, I don't think there's ever going to be like a person or at least a gamer when you're presenting props or character concepts or anything like that that's going to really shoot you down, or at least in my gaming group there's not going to be many people that's going to be doing that, shoot you down for presenting a character that's AI generated or something like that, because you're not it's I would say the moral quandary of using AI is all about how you use it and what do you use it for. If it's really for your own personal use and making things easier and you're not trying to make a quick buck with it, and like you everybody acknowledges what this is, what this comes from and so forth, and ultimately there's always going to be this level of like it's always going to be more impressive to have this your artist friend being able to draw a character. But let's be fair here. Like, no, not everybody has a talented artist friend who can do that, and that artist friend is not always available, and more often than not, the
And
more
he
the
wants, and
older you grow.
justifiably, he wants to be paid for his efforts too.
Yeah,
And
that too. You
Yeah.
like you want to compensate
Yeah.
them, and ideally you should, if you
Mhm.
want to make a commission, and that's very fair. But at the same time, if I want to make a character and I know for a fact that he's gonna last a single campaign, or like,
Yeah,
and that campaign is going to be like 5 sessions, I don't necessarily have the cash, time, or the money, or the people available, the networks and connections available in order to do that. And like many a times when I try to search for different character ideas, I'm often going to be ending up on different art sites.
hmm, hmm,
DeviantArt comes to mind because it's a really
Mhm.
good place to search for characters. Pinterest and other places like that where they have something that approximates to your concept, but there's always this little thing you have to compromise on. There's always this little thing that's not quite
Yeah.
like you want to get this specific vibe. I remember closely when I created a character for Exalted, I wanted to have a character who had a Middle Eastern vibe slash assassin, and the only images I could ever find were of Saracen warriors with like huge beards, almost always mounted on a horse, and I was like, and the vibe is close, but it's not what I want because the characters was definitely too young to have that kind of facial feature, that kind of like that very thick and like prominent beard, and I was like, I'm gonna have to go with that because I don't have the means to like push out the exact character I have in mind. But everybody was like, "Your character is 22. How come does he have the beard of a like 45-year-old man?" And I was like, you know,
it's a disguise.
Well, now with AI, you could get the proper facial hair. Just you'll have 6 or 7 fingers on one hand and maybe 3 on the other,
and an extra arm.
For 7 fingers, and then you'll get 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But seriously though, it can be a fairly funny moment when you have like somebody who pumps up a character and then kind of like Princess Bride, the 6-fingered man. You're just like, well, you know what? I'm just gonna pump it in my character, and it's gonna be some kind of fluff. It doesn't give me any kind of an advantage. It's just some weird quirk that doesn't impede or advantages me, and it's just gonna roll with it.
Yeah,
sure.
I've taken AI courses for work. I'm a software developer, and even this month I took AI courses just because they're kind of pushing us to do it. And the ethical concerns, like I think Francois said, is if you're trying to make money off of it, it's slightly different than if you're just using it for gaming. But you're right. Like you can't make up any concept and then just make art for it yourself always, or even find art for it. I remember way back in, I think it was the 90s, I was playing with Josh online. We were playing. How did we do that? Was it through like IRC chat when we played Heroes with those guys?
That was actually through Palladium's website. They had a built-in chat room right in the website.
Like, I made my art by taking pictures of Batman, the Eradicator, and the Dragon Ball Z character in the MS Paint, and taking parts of them out and sticking them together.
Oh, you sort of photoshopped your way to success with MS Paint.
I took Vegeta sitting here like this within his armor, Batman's head without the pointy ears, and Eradicator's cape.
I think I remember that image too.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned it. And the thing is like, because I've run so many online games previous to a lot of the AI generated stuff which are fairly new, the last 2-3 years now. It was a lot of my online games, my material, it was a lot of scouring. Like I would sit and go through Google Images over and over, hours upon hours upon hours, just to find. And I know some of you guys are familiar with Hero Machine, which was that program that you smell characters together. I'd use the character there was a really good character generator that they made that ran off of City of Heroes' like back end, that you could basically use all the different costume parts and everything and put together any character. And then I have if you go through my Steam list, I have like Portrait Maker and all those. And I would try my best to give, to give what I could. But the problem, what would happen is in games, sometimes some of the images would cause more jovialness or, get a laugh. Sometimes people would recognize the image and then they would have a preset notion. Well, this is going to be a bad guy. This is going to be a bad guy because that's Michael Corleone. This is going to be a bad guy. It's like, just because I'm using, that picture does not mean it's going to be a bad guy. But,
the very thin, twirly mustache, and like, I am very evil.
He's a good guy with a red skull. Just come on, deal with it.
Not his fault.
That's why I would never use Sean Bean as a character image.
Oh no,
he's going to die.
But the AI, when it first came out, I was like, I'll give it a shot. Like the first one I used was "This person does not exist." I don't know if any of you've ever seen that website. It's an AI generator that generates photorealistic images of people that don't exist. It literally, scours and takes everything and I was using that for NPCs and stuff. And people are like, well, who's that an image of? I said, well, this is who they are. It's like, well, no, who are they? But this is who they are. They don't exist outside of what I've created for them. So, and, and it's funny, you say that you wouldn't have, you think that at a table when you're playing a table or online, right? You think that it wouldn't come up, but I've had people who are these AI-based images? I'm like, why? But because I won't play at a table if you're using AI-based images. It's like, okay, like, and,
Yeah.
and you get that really weird, like, they just don't want to play. Like, okay, you don't. I get it. You object to me using AI based images. I use the other images, and people would make fun. Like Portrait Maker, for example, they're like, "Well, why does every NPC you show us look like a mugshot?" It's like, well, guys, it's not like it gives me the option to tweak their emotional state or and but I have had people who basically bailed out of games or who gone on rants about AI, and it's like, okay, like, great. And so,
It's
yeah,
it's the source of what they were trained on. That's the objection, is that especially the art based ones and the ones that write for you, write text, they were trained on people's work without them being paid and without them being asked. That's the problem.
Also the fact that, and this goes right back to how we opened it, about gaming in our, the last 30 years or whatever, how we are and all that. I've noticed, as a gamer and as very small but still a little bit of a publisher, how people can mount a pedestal in this hobby like nobody else.
Oh my lord.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
my
They
gosh,
practice by
you know?
gaming. Oh,
Yeah. I mean,
Pretty much.
everybody, I, whether it's a sexual position, not like a position like,
Yeah.
transgenderism or all of that, not a position like,
Yeah.
that, but whether it's a sexual position, political position, religious position, and handicap or anything, everybody has their thing, and they see it and they'll go for it, jump on that pedestal, point at you,
Yeah.
and let you have it.
There are a
I
lot of
mean,
soapboxes in our hobby.
yeah, and not to mention
Yeah.
everybody, not everybody, but most people at one point or another, me included, like to play Captain Actually, and yeah, and I got to be Captain Actually here, and let you know that
That
that's
or
not
the
correct. He's Babylonian, not Mesopotamian. I'm sorry. You
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
that or the sheer weight of expectations. I've been blessed enough to always being able to game with my personal close friends and have enough friends to have a few gaming groups that I never lack for a group of gaming. But the amount of
Lucky
people
you.
that I've seen game with strangers or go on open forums and either start games or join games, and then suddenly there'd be a player like, "Oh, you're not like Matt Mercer, or you're no Travis." What was this called? No, was it Trevor or Travis, the one at the games with Matt Mercer with the Vox
Travis
Machina campaign?
Willingham. Yeah.
Yeah, and or this or that voice actor, and they expect the voices, they expect the expression, they expect the uh 10 steps ahead villain, and the I like super prepared my campaigns to the point that like whatever you do, I have a second plan, like Batman level planning, and I'm like, listen, Matt is an amazing DM. I haven't seen everything that he could do me personally, but by reputation, I know he does a lot. And the Matt Mercer effect, where it's either Mercer or you just don't do it, that has ruined so many groups and so many DMs' self confidence, because you don't have to be Matt Mercer to produce a good campaign. You just have to
Oh
be
yeah.
genuine, and you have to have people who are interested, and not every campaign is going to appeal to every type of player. Like
Yeah.
I personally like to run a lot of Warhammer 40k and a lot of Grimdark, but it doesn't appeal to everybody, and that's okay.
No.
And I'm very free flow. I'm very sandboxy. I like to give you a stage, and you make like I'm gonna provide a stage. I'm gonna provide characters. I'm gonna provide different kind of elements that you can interact with, but at the end of the day, aside from maybe depending on the campaign, there's going to be a general end game objective that you're going to want to strive for it, but like how you get there is ultimately up to you. So I focus my energy, my intentions to bring life into the characters that are around, but it's not scripted.
Very
So that's
sandboxy.
that's very sandboxy. So if you're expecting for a clear direction from me, I know it's not my strength because I don't like anything that goes with railroading. Like there's going to be some sequences. Like if you decide to go on a specific down a specific path, I know that like if you decided to side with, I don't know, the cultists of corn, there's going to be combat because that's how corn works. But at the same time, if you decide to like not interact with anyone, well, at some point, some stuff is going to happen, and that's just how the universe works. But if you're looking to me to be like, well, A, B, C is going to happen in that specific order, like that's not me. Similarly, there are other DMs who are very railroady, who like to tell their own story, and you're kind of part along for the ride. And that's where you don't get as much choices, and that can appeal to certain players because they like to have a direction, they like to have a framework into which they can work, and they don't do too well with like too many choices, and they feel kind of lost whenever that happens. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad DM to do this. It just means that
No,
it's not the type of
different
play
style.
that you're for.
Yeah.
Different style.
Well,
I guess
Critical
that's one of
Role.
the benefits of our age. Sorry, Jim. Is that because of we've had some of us decades in the hobby, we understand that Matt Mercer may be amazing, but that's not necessarily how D&D is meant to be played or has been played in the past. And it's like Francois was saying, it's setting very bad expectations to try and expect that level of perfection out of any home group.
Yeah.
And we understand that, where a lot of the newer kids who perhaps got into D&D through watching Critical Role or Dimension 20 or one of the actual play shows may not understand that not everyone plays that way, and not everyone can play that way.
Yeah.
So we have that hindsight,
And sometimes you're going to have, especially if you have a certain amount of experience, like I myself, I'm rather on the young side for this show. I'm actually 33, but like I do have extensive experience when it comes to gaming, and the way I game, the way I see gaming, and the way I look at different gaming systems is not the same way that another person that's going to be younger than me is going to be looking at it. I've seen so many different kinds of systems. I've seen most of White Wolf Publishings. I've seen a lot of D&Ds. I've seen the difference between D&D and Pathfinder. I've seen Warhammer 40k, Warhammer Fantasy. I could go on, to be quite honest. There are so many to see, and I was blessed to be part of a role-playing game community back in college, so there was a lot to see. And I got attached to a few of those systems that became kind of my go-tos, kind of my personal favorites, and it's not necessarily going to be the same. And even then, as time advanced, there came in certain advent of certain systems like I think it's called Iron Sworn, and other systems like that, where there can be no DMs, and there's
yes,
DMs. You can like play by yourself, or where you play with a group of
solo
people
RPG.
kind of all are. And to me, that was absolutely alien. And I was like, how the heck can you play a game when there's no DM and there's no one to kind of not necessarily lead the ball? Because ultimately, the DM is also part of the story, and you're also there to have fun. You're not responsible. You're part. Yeah. You're responsible to make the word alive, but you also have a right to have fun.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like it was so disorienting the first time I played Iron Sworn, when I was like, there's no DMs, there's no one to be like the head chef, or no one to refer to a role. Everybody is kind of the DM, and everybody decides we're gonna go in that direction. And I was like, even as a sandboxy DM, and as a person who considered this to be their own strength, I was like, this is a bit much for me. And I was like, I was not ready.
The rest of you guys, have you had any exposure to solo role playing or anything like that, or what do you think of it?
Not solo role not solo role playing in the traditional sense, or at least not system based. In a weird way, connected almost back to the AI. I've been playing with AI chatbots, and some of them have gotten surprisingly, I don't want to say complicated, but like detailed and good.
Complex.
Thank you. I actually, one night I was bored. I was sitting, and I was, that's how it is. Sometimes you just don't want to play a game. You look at the list of movies and TV shows. You're like, I don't want to watch anything. And I don't really want to read. I just like, what do I want to do? Well, I loaded up one of the chat bots, and I was like, oh, okay. Somebody wrote a module for the chatbot to function as a DM, but also they wrote modules for chatbots to function as players. You basically give them a set of parameters, and they'll run with it. And I DM'd basically just me, the only person, a group of AI chatbots, and I actually was like, this is creepy in a way because these are responding, but they were doing things. And I went back and talked to one of my players. I talked to him like we talk all the time, and because he's a real close friend. And I'm like, there's some of these answers. I swear to God, one of these chatbots was if you wouldn't have told me that they were bots, I'd have swear to God he was on the other end tying out the response because this bot acted identically to how he plays. Like, boy. Yeah, I mean, well, just the brief example was. It was running I basically did a cyberpunk narrative. So you said, okay, I want to use the cyberpunk, 2077 for, this is going to be the background. This is what I want to do. Okay, so they all made their little characters. One of the characters just like, well, what, I'm running I'm running a solo who's cybered out. What starting gear can I have? I'm like, okay, well, I'll give you a vibro katana and auto pistol. And it's like, wow, can you be any more cliche? Like, come on, get a little bit original with it. Like,
did you get roasted by a chatbot?
Yeah.
Oh no.
And then like, you know what? And then finally I'm like, okay, you tell me what you want. Oh, well,
listen here,
I want a chainsaw and I want a sawed-off shotgun. I'm like, okay, you can have a chainsaw shotgun, and I want a rubber chicken. I'm like, wait, what? Like this? Then it went into. I said, okay, why do you want a rubber chicken? Typed it in. And it came back with like 2 paragraphs of explaining to me the importance of a rubber chicken and its utilization as a distraction, an interrogation tool, to throw off of when speaking to people. If you hold a rubber chicken in your hand, they're not quite sure how to take you. You might be somebody who's quite insane, or you could, like it started giving me all this. I'm like, what am I like? And the thing is I have players who think like that, and they have the weird mentality.
Yeah, you expect it out of a human, not a chatbot.
Right. And it was good. Now
I will admit to this kind of behavior.
And it was a fun little experience. I mean, it killed time, which isn't that what gaming is about. I had fun, killed time. And there are holes. It's not perfect. I'm not telling people go out there and run AI through role playing games, but it actually got me thinking. And I said, I'm going to start using some of these chatbots that I've generated. I've saved them. I'm going to start using some of them for my NPC chat for my players when I play online. Because sometimes when you're trying to put yourself in a mind as a DM, when you're trying to put yourself in the mindset of every NPC, it gets very difficult to divide them up, make them unique, and make them different.
Yeah.
But if I'm feeding the information into it, and it can give me the dialogue to shoot back, I can keep in that feel and that little bit of uniqueness. But I've also, from what I've been reading, some of these places, they allow it to do voice chat. Like it will spit out its response to voice chat. It will actually isolate and have a unique voice. And it's like, it's getting crazy. Wow. It's getting crazy. And but then again, it's like going back to the AI. It's a tool, which I know, again, because I like to use all the funny stuff. I like to do all that when I'm doing my virtual tabletops. It gives me another tool in my toolbox that I can increase the experience of my players. Because that's always what it's, to me, I have fun when I know my players are having fun. If every player walks away from the computer screen or walks away from my table at the end of the night and they want to either play more, or like, I want to know what happens next, I want to play more, or it's like, I had a really good time. That's the moment I'm like, I had a great time.
Well, it's just that the biggest compliment is when's the next game?
Exactly.
Yeah. Until the day comes when you hear the knock at the door and you open it and it's like, hello, Josh.
Yeah. Hey, I'm helping the progression of AI. I don't have to worry about them coming for me.
Yeah.
I just have this moment where you just like you play with an AI DM and like, I'm sorry, I can't let you do that.
It's like, why are you going to Skynet for your AI?
So the DMs,
But
I've tried the solo play with the AI DMs, and I just tell you right now, if it says strict DM or hard DM, they ain't kidding. Those guys are brutal. Like it goes, they're like OSR. Like they make OSR look like shoots and ladders, or Candyland, because it's like, oh, okay, you walk into the room. I checked for traps. You didn't find any traps. Okay, I step into the room. A block has fallen out of the ceiling, and it's promptly
trust you.
under 2 tons away. It's like, wow, like okay, they have that, but of course they're programmed like that. They're programmed to be that brutal. But
it's a bit like a throwback to the old games we used to have on like the old Apple IIe and the Commodores, with the ANSI graphics, and I turn left, go forward, turn left. Rock falls from ceiling. Oh, shit.
To touch back on the Matt Mercer thing, it's been my experience that if you're lucky, you've seen a Matt Mercer type of person. Not everybody knows Matt Mercer players, but sometimes you'll go to a con or you'll go to a game store, you'll go somewhere and you'll see one in action and you're like, dang, But the internet has put Matt Mercer on for everybody to think that is common.
No, it's not.
It's
Yeah,
so
it is not.
not.
No,
Like-
the whole Critical Role team are all talented voice actors, so they can do different voices. They can,
Exceptional.
improv.
They're professionals.
Oh yeah.
Like I've had the chance to have some amazing scenes with different kind of peoples, either in medieval LARPs or even by night studio LARPs with vampire and stuff like that. And I've had some very high emotions run, and I've had some people that were dedicated to the role, that they were really into it, and I've had some emotions run high, both crushing, soul destroying, heart wrenching, or some other places, some other times. Like just as recently as this week, I was playing this character who was getting really, really anxious about the weight of having to save the world against this like monstrous entity that was roaming space within a Spelljammer campaign. And one of the players started to like really take it upon himself. It was like, listen, like take a look at all that we've accomplished up to now, and we're like level 9 characters in D&D, and like take a look at what all that we have accomplished. Every single time you're at the forefront, we've left this settlement, this city for the better. We have trusted bonds with those people, and like they were really getting into the speech, and it was genuinely uplifting. And I was like, oh my god, like I know like this is for the benefit of my character, but like I myself out of game, I am feeling uplifted.
Yeah,
that's one of the big things when like people are like, oh, you go to LARPs, that's weird. And I'm like, LARP is a completely different and like way more, I don't want to say intimate experience, because the games I go to are like 50 to 100 people, but everybody is so much more in tune with their character when for 2 days you're in their clothes, in their shoes, living their life.
You've invested a lot in the character, a lot more than on a piece of paper.
Yeah. It's essentially improv acting with a character you created, but you have to live as them for 2+ days at a time.
Have you ever heard of the bleeding effect?
Yeah.
That I don't know if you've ever experienced it and if you've ever had to deal with it, but it has been something that has been a little bit more recognized by the people around me and by my group. And I've started when it was pointed out to me, like it came out as kind of something that was like as a matter of fact, or like I don't know how to say it in English. Like of course this was gonna happen because it's closer to the vest, it's closer to you. You're playing you're an incarnate of that character, and so some of the feelings that you're going to be feeling, either you feel them so strong that you have to take some time to detach yourself from them and to distinguish reality from acting. But like that's one of the things that I've sometimes realized, especially with younger players who haven't had that level of experience left, that sometimes people will either be conned or be like I do some really nasty stuff, like, oh, I'm gonna betray you to this group of cultists who are going to torture you and so forth, and then they genuinely hate me for it after that. And I was like,
Yeah.
that was entirely into character. Like, I didn't mean for you to have, like,
Yeah.
I'm not a bad person in real
Yeah.
life. It's just
It's
I had
just
an
a game.
objective I needed to do to make good on a deal, and you happened to be there.
Mm.
But you realize that, LARPing, all of it, role playing, it's a psychological tool.
Yeah.
Very much.
Oh, yeah.
Psychologists, psychiatrists use it as a legitimate tool. And when we do it, yeah, we do it for fun. We're doing let's pretend, but sometimes there could be a very thin line, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm surprised I've
Yeah.
never seen a movie where somebody, like a thriller, where someone who is into that just crosses over.
It's an old movie with Tom
Geniuses
Hanks.
and Monsters.
Well, yeah, that one, but I mean, but a good one. I'm sorry, I mean,
Yeah, a good one. Yeah.
we've
Hey,
all
that's
seen
Tom
Tom
Hanks,
Hanks
how
do
about
it, but like it could actually be a psychological thriller in a sense,
Yeah.
With
But
Dallas Big
Yeah,
Brother.
I hear what you mean. I remember
I'll
reading a
I'll-
book many years ago that was along those lines. It was called Hobgoblin, and
I have that one. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't remember all the details, but it was like a kid who was playing a D&D type game called Hobgoblin, and while he's playing D&D and his paladin gets killed, his father dies at the same time, and then he ends up exploring some kind of weird old haunted castle or whatever, and he was like comparing everything to the game, and I
Yeah.
remember enjoying it, but it's
He
probably
starts
over 30
seeing
years.
like monsters and stuff at his
Yeah.
party or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember enjoying that book, but probably over 30 years ago now. I probably don't own the copy of it anymore, but
But as Jeff pointed out, yeah, there are possibilities to push people into disassociative behaviors, or but I think most of us derive the opposite benefit from it.
oh yeah,
It's a
great,
stress relief.
great creative outlet. but,
Yeah.
It helps us process. We may have problems we're dealing with personally, and we can sort of research them or workshop them at the table,
Yep.
and come back
Yeah.
to our personal lives and go, I know how to deal with that situation now.
Mm-hmm.
have
Yeah.
any of you guys come across that? Because I mean, I've never had a oh hell moment, like with all you guys, and then seeing Eric just go off, and I'm like, dude, okay, hey, can we take a break here? That kind of thing. Have you guys ever had that?
I mean,
Well, I know
But being
Francois
overwhelmed?
mentioned it. Francois mentioned that he had one.
Yeah. Not
where
at the
people were
table,
doing it. Yeah.
but at LARPs. Yeah.
Okay. Because
Yeah,
when he was talking about it, I was thinking, what would a table flip at a LARP look like?
Oh, a table flip?
Like your character.
Oh well, the LARPs I go to, we carry Nerf guns and foam weapons, and we beat the hell out of each other. So like it would look like that.
Okay, well that
But-
would work. Yeah.
in one of the LARPs where I went, a moment where somebody just went off the rails. It was there was a rule at the LARP that certain people would be there and incarnating their characters, but physically they couldn't handle combat. So
Mhm.
if you were to like put siege on a fort and try to start a war or something like that, there were certain people who you couldn't go ahead and start hitting with your foam weapons. So it doesn't mean that you could still kill them. You could be like, okay, I'm not going to hit you, but like
Mhm.
obviously I need to kill everyone here, so I'm going to be killing you, and then the person goes away. The thing is, there was confusion that happened, and there was a symbol where the person was supposed to wear something distinctive to let everybody know that, like, hey, this person mustn't be attacked, so please don't. And there was a raid that happened where that person they didn't get hit very very hard, just like a tap on the shoulder to say, hey, I use my ability to knock you out because I need to pass by you, and you can't see me or alert anyone else, so like just knock you out, do my stuff. And it happened to be a girl, and her boyfriend learned the only thing that he heard was his girlfriend got hit, and that stuff was stolen from their group, so it became very personal. and he went ballistics and just started to raid off, and like it started getting very physical, but like it was no longer like pretend fighting. It was like he was hitting hard. He was pushing people to the ground and like really going for the stomach and the sternum, and it became violent. And at some point we had to be like, no, you need to chill out and you need to get the hell away, because this is no longer playing. This isn't anymore. Like this started to become dangerous. It didn't go too far, fortunately, and there was no need to press any charges. But there was a moment where we were like, dude, you need to chill. Like,
No, I've never seen anything like that, luckily, and I've never really experienced a table flip, or like someone storming out.
When I was about 15 or 16, I played a character, a cleric, for over a year, and then he died in a campaign. Which, when you're 15, you invest in the character. You, I guess, identify with it, whatever. And so the character died, which was, offsetting enough. But then the guy who was the DM just started heaping on all kinds of stuff. Horrible the character died, how he died with fire, his skin was all burned off, and I just flipped out, and he had a binder on front of the desk, and I slapped the binder basically off the desk and fuck you, and I left the table. So that's about the only real table flip that I've ever witnessed, and I did it myself, which highlight, proud moment.
That's okay. You were young and we're all
one guy. Yeah, I know one guy in board games who would always wig out and throw dice, but that was a board game. That was different.
Yeah, I only ever had one person throw dice, and he was a rather large bodybuilder at the time.
Okay.
College, and he whipped one of the original metal dice at a cinder block wall and dented it. Not the wall, the die. And hey, Russell, if you're out there, yeah. And I'm glad no one was standing there when he threw it.
Oh man, I've not seen table flips, but I've seen breakdowns, and same like Jim was talking about. When you're at a certain age, when you're young enough that you've got a lot of hormones, testosterone, all kinds of medical, just growing up stuff,
impressionable, and
puberty.
Yeah, and I've seen people break down and cry, and are you crying, dude? Are you crying? And that just makes it worse.
Of course.
And it's like, no, I'm not crying. And there's a part of you that is like, oh man, he's crying. But on the other hand, when you get alone, you're like, damn, I'm glad that wasn't me. Would I have been doing that? I don't know. But it was.
I've had a few moments
so emotionally invested.
Yeah. Well, I find there's I guess a different attitude. The really old, I put Grognard under my screen name here, but the guys that are even older than me, the guys that came from actual wargaming and then transferred into D&D or early Traveler, for them there's a very different perspective. I mean, some people treat their character no more than a chess piece. This is the king, this is the pawn, he can do this, that, the other thing, and that's it. Where other people will invest time, they'll I was running a game at the local gaming store here, and one player got very into her character, drew all kinds of images, paid to have one of those fancy 3D printed miniatures, and really. And we played the game, I don't know, probably about 8-9 months, and then I forget what the creature was, but it was a beholder, and the beholder disintegrated her. Like, I swear to God, I thought she was going to cry right there, and she composed herself, and I felt really crappy. Like, sometimes characters die, but
I did that with an NCAG. I cut somebody in half with an NCAG.
Okay.
And, she just that was bad.
There's nothing really stopping you from reusing that character in a different game, though.
Yeah,
you can invest all you want in it. Just play it again.
Yeah. Even better, we were playing in a friend's campaign, Thumper Norm from the old boards.
Oh, yeah.
And my first character got killed within 3 adventures. So when he got killed, I said, I'm not rolling up another one. This is his twin brother. And I changed the name on the sheet.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
how many people are guilty of that here?
Oh, I think we've all
Yeah,
done that.
I've heard of that a lot.
You
There-
play
there's
champions,
also-
and if the red archer goes down, well, now he's the blue archer.
Sure,
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there we go.
It's-
Let's play.
when it comes to like, here's the thing too. When it comes to online, you still get I've seen my fair share of table flips, especially when you put yourself out there. You're playing with a lot of random people. You get them for stupid reasons, and sometimes you get them for something that's like emotionally valid. I consider stupid. We're playing a game and the dice just aren't rolling the way you need them to roll. Your character dies, and I try to pull punches the best I can. I don't like to go I don't like my players dying unless it means something. And I know a lot of players are like, well,
I like to do that. I'll admit, after I killed a character, I kind of wimped out, and they were kind of working for the local city government, so I kind of had them sent over a reincarnation spell or something, true resurrection, so she can come back to life. So I didn't permanently kill her character. I realized, probably I went a little too far in that one instance, because you put time into creating the character and you want it to survive. You run a route for the hero. I mean, how fun would Star Wars be if Han Solo died during the prison break, and then they brought in a new character, and then Luke dies and bring in another new character. So people invest in it. They want to
Game of Thrones, basically.
Yeah, Game of Thrones. Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't even be that necessarily in those cases, it wouldn't even need to be that bad. But it's just sometimes players just get really. I think it's more or less they're angry at the dice. They're angry at you because, well, why did you give me a goblin to fight? Why couldn't you find something easier for us to fight? It's like, I'm sorry, I'm really trying to pull, but I'm trying to have the goblin shoot the other people without it being obvious. But sometimes you just roll bad, and that makes you feel bad. But on the other side of the spectrum, I've seen when it comes to online play, a table flip is actually, especially when you're using Discord, is you'll have somebody who will they'll leave the Discord server, or if it's their server, they'll boot everyone out, and they'll completely defriend everybody. At that point, if you don't have people on your friends list on Discord, one tip I'll give you: if you meet people while you're playing online, if you ever play with random people with Discord, make sure to add them to your friends list, because if you're on a server, if that server disappears, unless you remember what their specific usernames are, finding them it can
impossible.
Be right. Yeah. And and I've seen it. I've seen it for, like I said, there's emotionally valid reasons. There is a poor guy. I had a long running campaign. I love the players to death. There were 4 of them, and one of them I just didn't understand. He apparently had a crush on another player. I didn't know. I don't set up false things. I don't do any of that stuff. If the players want to do whatever they want to do, that's great. I don't set up that stuff. If there's something going on, well, in the game, she and him would talk out a game, which I knew none of this, right? Because it's not my business. No. And he ended up getting rejected in game by her. And I guess it was right after he had, because he wanted to get together with her. We've been talking for, we've been playing for 4 months. We've been talking, we only live about 100 miles apart. Let's get together. And she's like, nah, she's like, I don't know you that well. And so when we got in game, he again got rejected by her. And
did you try to make a move on her by proxy through his character?
No. I did. Well, he did. Yes, I didn't. Like I said, I didn't even know what was going on. All of a sudden, he like drops out of Discord, like defriends me, blocks me. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And it was like, it was all it was like he's like, well, because they were like doing what it was at the end. They were in could only put 2 people per room. Like they didn't have single rooms. So he immediately like, well, me and her, we're going to share a room, and then such and such is going to share a room. And I don't care. I'm the DM. I don't care who shares a room because it doesn't matter. In the middle of the night, the rooms are going to get broken into. Thieves are going to come try to steal stuff, and they're going to, it's a trope. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
But like, she's like, no, she's like, I much prefer to sleep with the barbarian who, smells like cow manure, blah, 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 blah. She pulled a Princess Leia, like, thing, which was her character. Her character was never nice.
It was in character for her. Okay.
But for some reason, it just like instantly triggered him. And I want easily, well, he contacted me first out of the blue 7 months later, apologizing. 7 months. So half a year goes by, and he's like, I couldn't handle it. He's like, I thought we had a connection. She knew a lot of things about me. And I'm like, I didn't know. I said, I'm done. And I'm never going to pry. I'm never going to ask.
No.
But I've also been in games where that's happened, where two players have some falling out over, it could be over something, serious. It could be over ideologies. It could be over anything. And it just completely destroys everything and the game disappears. Now, It's funny, you said the bleed effect. I've had games I have had to end campaigns because things that were going on in campaigns hit a little too close to home. Not by it, there are some DMs who will do that. There's some that they have that, like, I'm going to use this emotional paintbrush and I'm going to poke and prod at you in your sensitive areas to get you to feel more emotion, right? I don't do that because I've seen how bad that can end up if you're not careful. Mm-hmm. But I've had games, unfortunately, that I've chosen to end because, briefly, I was running a game and we were using Palladium system, which is one of my favorite, go-to for, like, if you're doing like a generic game, right? Mm-hmm. And it was a mix up of, like, think of like an 80s style mashup of like the teen spy movies where the teens would be the new generation of spies and and stuff like that. Well, the one character, his sister, she was being experimented on by this scientist because they were like, it turned out his sister was a clone, and it was like a really complicated storyline, but everyone was loving it, everything was going good. Well, unfortunately, his real life sister got diagnosed with cancer and she was gone within like 7 days. Like, it was that sudden. He flew, so he like lets us know what's going on. And I talked to the players, we're done with the game. And they're like, well, really? I said, listen, even when he gets back, let's say, weeks upon weeks or whatever, when he's in the mood to play, I can't go back into that game knowing we drove this big storyline about his sister being experimented on, all this crap about him trying to save his sister, and put him back in that. And I can't go back in the game and erase her from the game and completely ignore it because he's built his character. His character came out of a shell to I'm going to be the good guy because I'm going to save my sister. Like, that's the moment. That was his what do they call it?
Motivation.
Right. Call to action.
It's like, call to action. Like, I'm going to stop being a pansy and start sticking up because I need to protect my sister. And I'm like, guys, this game, we can't go back to this game. And
no way to retcon,
Exactly. And I wasn't going to, and they're like, well, can you run without him? And I said, I not that they were trying to, trust me, it wasn't an insensitivity issue. A lot of these players like the game, and I said, I can't. I even me, myself, emotionally, I can't thinking about that because, and I felt bad because, it was a really fun game and it had a lot of crazy ideas and, everyone was having a good time, but shit happens, especially at the age we're getting to. That stuff is unfortunately more.
As you get older, you live through stuff or you hear about stuff, and then it starts getting to you, and sometimes you just don't want it in your life or you don't want to experience it. Like, for instance, I myself have gone through enough stories of assault of the intimate kind, and I avoid putting that in any of my games, and I generally have a hard time whenever that's like, I don't mind if it's like part of a universe. Like, for example, the Word of Darkness is always full of shitty stuff that happens here and there, and if it's in the headline somewhere in the background as part of ambiance or something like that, that's okay. But like, if as a DM you start describing me in great detail how ruthlessly disgusting this thing goes off, I'm gonna be like, you need to shut up right now or I'm leaving. Like, just summarize it to something really bad happens and I'm gonna be all right. Which kind of reminds me of something I learned back in 2019. in Toronto, there was this. Well, it's still happening pretty much every year, as far as I understand. It's called the Breakout Con, which is a role-playing game convention in
think
the
I've heard of it.
Toronto area. I went in 2019, and I learned about a lot of tools that I didn't realize I was already using, because between friends, you kind of already know everybody's sensitivities, especially if you know them well. So you don't need to use them as much. But when you start playing with strangers, you don't know with whom you're going to be starting to play. You don't know who you're going to DM with. You don't know who's going to DM you. So there's sometimes need to be like a session zero, about to speak about what kind of topics you want to approach, what kind of topics you don't want to approach, and so forth. And you have to have tools to be like, listen, guys, I don't mean to be a dick, but I can't deal with this thing right now. And I think one of the first thing that they really introduced me, and it was mandatory at every table, because I volunteered to DM 2 one shots during that convention. And one of the things that was explained was the X card, which is a situation where if you start getting into a specific topic and a player has an absolute problem with it and cannot deal with this, they tap the hex card and you have to switch. You have to switch the way that things are going. Like for instance, in the instance of intimate assault, for example, if somebody can't deal with that kind of thing, you just describe like something goes really wrong, or like there's you move, instead of it being intimate, you start being more physical,
Wrap it up.
or
Yeah.
and you wrap it up, or you move on to something. You just quickly change to something, and the person doesn't
Yeah.
have to explain themselves. It's just, and it's not a get out of jail free card. It's not like,
Yeah,
oh, I
unfortunately,
decided to like
I wish
rob.
I wish it weren't, but I have a feeling it can and does get used as a weapon.
Well,
Yeah.
surprisingly, at least at the convention where I went, no, it wasn't, because it was explicitly mentioned that it was really to not have to deal with really sensitive and issues that were really too close to the vest. But when it came to the use of the X card, it wasn't like, let's say I robbed the mayor's vault. It's not going to get me out of the fact that I robbed the mayor's vault. The authorities are going to be after you. The police is going to be after you, and you're going to have to deal with those consequences. However, I don't necessarily have to get into details of like
It's a
everything
fade
that
to black.
happens. If it's an especially dark world, like, yeah, they might resort to torture, but maybe it's not like it's going to be one type of torture instead of another.
You don't have to describe the torture and how
Yeah.
much it hurts when they rip out your fingernails or whatever.
Gruesome stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes
But
some people just can't.
again, I mean, maybe I'm just sheltered. I don't know, but I'm thinking I've never had even in the roughest campaigns or the darkest campaigns I've been in, I've never had anyone go into that amount of detail where it became so revoltingly shocking. I mean, I guess it could be, but it's just I've been lucky, I guess.
It's
One of the keys that he pointed out, though, was that these are tables of people you don't really
strangers.
know.
Yeah,
They're strangers.
It's a lot
And
different
even
with people you know.
Us amongst ourselves, we don't know what our proclivities are after we get offline.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true.
So,
No, I see the utility in it. I see the utility.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's like you worry about those sometimes. Like, okay, is this person just skipping through these scenes because he doesn't want to deal with them? Do they have a real problem with it, or is it just he wants to race through the game?
I think it's more for like non-combat, non-high stakes things that are just triggering for people.
It's for psychological safety, basically.
Because many gamers, and we all met these people, they're combat monsters.
Yeah.
The talky bits in the middle bother them.
Yeah.
X card, move on. Get to a combat.
It's really not. It's really not about that. It's
it's not supposed to be. But I'm worried it gets used that way. Sometimes.
Yeah, well, you don't play with those people. Like that's the thing. Like, stop playing with those people.
I'd only play with them once, and that would have been
Well, every now and then you run into a player who his idea of fun or her idea of fun is spoiling other people's fun.
Yeah.
I remember
making
how
other people uncomfortable.
I understand the utility, I understand the purpose of it, and I applaud it.
Yeah.
I just
it doesn't skip. The thing is too, it doesn't skip the scenario. It skips the act. It's the fade to black. Right?
It's a fade to black. Yeah,
exactly.
It's a fade to black. So you might not describe the assault happening, but afterwards, the remnants of the assault and the action still have to be. Right, exactly. and like the people who like the combat monsters, the I can't even remember what the term I can't even remember that term. What?
Me neither.
Old age, right? We can't.
Old age is getting us.
Well, munchkins are a little bit different. Munchkins are a different animal altogether. But I don't know.
You mean Power Gamer?
Well, no, because again, like Munchkins, Power Gamers, like they just like to optimize everything. So even if it's out of
Murder hobos,
murder, yeah.
There you go.
We have a LARP. Yeah. We have a LARP term for it, but it doesn't apply to dice. It's stick jock.
Well,
okay, yeah,
right. So even if you get them, like they matter of fact, I would argue a lot of them probably wouldn't use an X card because they would see it as almost like, oh well, look at that. Excuse my friend, look at that pussy over there using the X card, because it would almost take away from the like, oh, look at how sensitive, it would hurt their masculinity in a way. But in my experience with the fate, like those types of situations, usually see more women use it than men. Not saying that women can't handle those situations, but sadly, I think there's a lot of male DMs and everything that sometimes don't understand the impact of some of the scenarios they're setting up.
A lot of
like I said, maybe I've been lucky, but I've always, especially if I was playing with a group of strangers, I would try to err on the side of sensitivity to start with.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people have no filter, or they engage in locker room talk. I used to play with one guy who. Now, I have a bit of a racy sense of humor, as Eric knows very well. I'm quick with a innuendo and stuff like that. But in games, I never go to the graphic stuff.
No.
And I played with one guy who just was always being sexual about anything. And it got really annoying at the time. And there was a girl in our group, too. It's like, just give it a rest.
Chill. Yeah, chill.
I remember back in high school time, there was
because I don't like that.
I was going to respond just what Travis said, and that's something we used to see more back then. Like as going from like being a younger gamer that started, as basically a tween or whatever, and then going like in those days, a lot of that, like you had said, hormones kind of played into it. I can't tell you the number of guys that we played with in high school, and Travis contested, they want their penis length had to be rolled.
Yeah, we had to roll for penis size when we played.
Yeah, every character had to roll for penis size. Every town, where's the brothel? Going to the whorehouse. Every single time.
We've all been there, yeah.
And I mean, in a sense, that's okay if you're the kind of if you play the kind of character that's kind of racy or kind of like horny all the time.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter the type of character they were playing. It literally was like, hey, I'm such and such the fighter. I have a 12-inch. You know what I mean? Like they would do that, and then and sadly, it got annoying. And I was playing with somebody who was very like that. Like every town, they wanted, okay, well, I need to find somebody to have sex with. I need to have like that's. They were upset. It was almost like they had the notches in their virtual, their belt, right?
Yeah.
I've had sex with this many pretend people in Josh's head. It's like okay. So
look at the whole dichotomy that's changed is because when we, for most of us, I'm sorry for this one, but for some of us that are older, to have a girl at the table, it was usually somebody's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, dude, you can have your girlfriend play, but she can't save you all the time because she's your girlfriend or whatever. Because we just didn't have girls at the table. Mm-hmm. And that's not that it was wrong or right or anything. It was just the way it was. So everybody would do the, hey, when are we going to go to the whorehouse? Oh, we want to go to the brothel. Oh, we want to, But then as women started playing more, that started
to go
fizzling out, getting out, because we don't do that. You don't do that around a mixed table.
Nope.
Plus, we got older and it wasn't, you're not the hormone rattled teenager anymore, so you don't care as much.
Exactly. All of that goes down. You play with kids, right? Mm-hmm. You got all of us and my 9-year-old who wants to play. And
Yeah, you don't
guys,
play the same way
we're
with
not going to
your
play that way, you
No,
know.
we're
35
not.
plus years old players than you would do with your like 9 to 10 years old kids.
Yeah.
Like I have sisters and a brother that I am planning on eventually running a campaign with, and like the type of humor that I have at times with some of my friends, I would be very careful about deploying it with my brother and sisters, because it's not something that's really appropriate. And I mean, it's the kind of thing where like it's okay to kind of be a little bit flirty or kind of be teasing, but it's the kind of teasing that would be like, you're in family. It's kind of.
You know where the
How,
boundaries
how
are.
old are they? How old are your siblings?
My brother has gone over 30, and my sisters are over 20.
Oh,
Okay. So
they
they're not
should be
kids.
mature enough. They're not. Yeah, they're not.
I mean,
little kids.
they definitely
Yeah.
But
have
even
seen
like you're
and
saying,
done or heard adult
yeah,
stuff, but it's
in
still
a
like
family, there's still some boundaries. Yeah.
Well,
I'm still 10 years older than them, and I'm still like, there are boundaries to be had. And
Yeah.
Well, I remember one time I mentioned to my group that my nephew was thinking of joining us, and I said, and he's almost 9, and there was like a look of horror that came on their face. I said, "No, relax, he's 30."
I think too. I played the tabletop group I play with, the in person, all older people, but then there's one teenager who was 14, and like when I talked to his dad, and it's like, well, you tell me you tell me where the line is or where the limit is, because I'm not going to push things. If you say that, hey, whatever, and his dad's like, he needs to man up. I don't care. Just whatever, throw whatever. I don't care how anyone talks. I don't care. He's like, I don't care. Just let's do this. And I noticed that he definitely, he's a little bit more quiet. I think he's intimidated, but when you're playing with a bunch of older guys, whatever. But once he started to get into it and having fun, he definitely, there was some of that behavior, that classic, teenage angst that jumped into. He was doing, like, I want to do this cool thing. I don't want to actually do something that's prescribed by the rules. I want to try something cool because it sounds cool or it looks cool. And I like it. I laugh at it because it's like, it kind of like breaks up the monotony of it. But he definitely, I was thinking, teenagers nowadays have so much more exposure to things. Like when we were teenagers, there was no internet for porn. The only porn you had was what you could buy off your older brother or the creepy guy outside the convenience store.
Oh Lord.
Right. No, I mean it's the truth though. So like so when I really do think when like, hey, well, I want to go to the brothel. I think that was an outlet. It was like them using their imagination, which a lot of these younger people, they don't need to use their imagination to think about that. So they're more task focused on beating stuff up. I definitely noticed the rise of the murder hobo, ironically, in this modern age versus the old days. The old days we had them, but I think it was because we had the school thought as this is a role playing game and this is a glorified board game. You had the people who wanted to play it like you said. Let's stop talking. Let's get to killing goblins. They wanted to get to the dice rolling. Yeah. And nowadays, it's I noticed that it's about getting in there, and a lot of younger players, in my experience, I got to have the optimal character. I have to have everything planned out. I don't like not having everything ready that's done already. Like all the younger people I play with online, they can tell me from level 1 to 10 exactly what their character is going to be. Every feat, every trait, every step.
Right. The optimizer.
Right, and I hate that. It drives me crazy.
That's a 3.5 artifact. Like that, when all the feats were introduced, build became a thing.
Yeah.
I have no problem with optimized character. I like to optimize my characters because I want a character that is going to be effective for what they're doing. If they're a fighter, I want to be able to have a good fighter. I want to, hit hard, do a lot of damage. If I'm a rogue, I want to be sneaky. I want to, get those sneak attacks.
Yeah, because you play those archetypes for a reason. That you want to be good at those things.
Yeah,
you want them to be effective, and so I don't have a problem with optimizing. I prefer it.
On the other hand, I do enjoy playing the average Joe. I love playing a guy 10 down the line or something like that. And if I get to a certain level, I did it as a joke one time. And I ended up, in the double digits level wise
Mhm.
because I had to play in my mind. I had to think and strategize where I didn't, because I didn't have 1800 strength and an 18 wisdom and an 18 dexterity, I
Yeah.
was just Joe, and
Well, I don't mind optimization. I really don't like that. What I mean when I say what drives me crazy is you want to be the best fighter you can be, and that's understandable. You want to do the most damage you can. Great. My fighter's gonna dual wield swords and the
Right. But if that's your personality,
well, and we're playing this campaign, and you spend and 90% of the campaign's been in the desert, and you're picking up seaward going feats that are about sailing just to get the bonuses to increase your to weapon damage. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they're
Yeah,
taking.
yeah.
I like I like natural character. This we had a D20 Star Wars game where we ended up converting our buddy to the whole idea that you want to grow your character naturally. You don't want to pre-plan it. And what we did was, like, he had everything played out. Well, when I get to this level, I'm going to go Jedi Guardian, and I'm going to pick up this and this and this. It's like, wait to, because he was going to be the Bastion. He was going to be the pure Jedi, like the ultimate Jedi, the Bastion of truth and honor and all that. And he was never going to get a dark side point. He promised he will never do anything to get a dark side point because his character is good. He's he wore white robes because he's good. And we played, and after there was the third or fourth session, he got beat up. Like, he basically had because they had a thing called subdual damage. Basically, it's like you take damage, but you don't take permanent damage, but you get knocked out.
Right,
so
like non-lethal, basically.
Yeah, and so these thugs start using stun batons, and they beat the hell out of him. And because they caught him on a surprise round, beat the hell out of him, so he couldn't even get his lightsaber ignited, and they stomped him, and they ended up losing. The DM had him lose a point of charisma because they beat him that bad, even after we put him in the block tank. And his character prided himself on his charm, his good looks, whatever. And he went back to the boss, he's like, and I went with him because we're like, hey, we're going to handle this. Because my character, he didn't care. My character was crazy, which we always thought what was going to happen is I was going to turn to dark side and he'd end up there was going to end up being this back and forth with us. So we go to the boss, and the boss is monologuing. DM loved it, right? He's monologuing about, you Jedi think you can come in here and you think you can just determine what's law and what's right and what's wrong. And while he's talking, he's like, I'm gonna use a dark side point. I'm gonna snap his neck. It's like, and the DM is like, pauses, like, wait, what? And sure enough, he rolled his force ability for force choke, used burn a dark side point, and killed the boss with one hit. And it's like, Mister, I will never use the dark side. I'm the pure. Got his first dark
First
side.
one to fall.
Right. And he ended up, the character progression from that point changed. He started to become more like, well, why shouldn't I just snap these necks of these idiots instead? Why should I be playing by these rules? He started to become more and more tempted by that. And he eventually realized, like, okay, now I see what you mean, because now his build was completely out the window, right? Because a lot of, he was actually building there was abilities later on. If you've had any type of dark side points, or you can't touch, you're no longer going to be a paragon of the Jedi Order. But he didn't care. And he realized what we meant. If you play the character and you do a natural progression of the character, and you pick stuff up organically, like if you want to be the badass fighter, great. And you find these feats that fit into what your character's been doing, great. But picking up feats, like I said, we're playing a desert campaign, and you're picking up, the swashbuckling rope specialty just to get the bonus. It's like, come on.
It makes no sense. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. I don't mind people optimizing as long as it makes sense.
It's like in 3 and 3.5 when they brought in prestige classes. Everyone would like, oh, I want to take this prestige class. Now, in my understanding from reading the prestige classes, is they were supposed to be something that was situationally available. Like, for example, if you're
but
playing
they had
around,
prerequisites though that you had to meet, and that was where.
You had to, but you also had to have the opportunity to be present. Like if it's, for example, in the Forgotten Realms, if you wanted to be a purple dragon knight, or the Purple Crown, Cormier, Well, if you never went near Cormier, you were never going to be one.
That or
if you never talked to the king, you weren't going to get knighted, So you can't just take them willy-nilly.
That or I also remember when I was talking to my friends about optimal cleric builds, the subject of taking the Church Inquisitor prestige class was among the table because Church Inquisitor was just clericing better than the cleric. And so it was like I was always like, you got to put your points in investigation, you got to put your points in like sense motive and stuff like that, and you really had to optimize your build in order to reach certain thresholds. But the thing is, the whole thing about the Church Inquisitor is that you are a paragon of your deity, of a representative of your deity, and you have to root out the corruption that, as per your deity's precepts, you have to be doing this kind of thing. So depending on what your deity, one Church Inquisitor would be sold very different from another Church Inquisitor, but you also have to be recognized by your organization as somebody who's upstanding the values and who's known to root out evil. And then you have to have had some deeds behind
there's a
your belt.
role-playing component to it.
There's a really large role-playing components to it, and like playing at some point somebody tried to pull out a Church Inquisitor, an Orcish Church Inquisitor of Moradin.
That ain't gonna fly.
And I was like, how? Just how? I understand you want to like have the massive strength bonus because it's useful for combat, but how? Moradin is a definite dwarven divinity, and like they don't go well with orcs.
No orcs need to fly.
There's two sides to optimization too. There's like the DM side where the players are optimizing and then, oh no, all my monsters are useless and I got to up the ante. And that sucks. But then the player side is I want to be good at something. Like I think Jim said, I'm a fighter. I want to be able to fight stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with people optimizing, honestly, because as long as it doesn't take precedence over everything else, you can still have a really fun character and have them be optimized.
Yeah. Or you can have
it's two different aspects of the game. Yeah, but optimizing is just one aspect of it. I mean, you have a character, and I like to have a little fun with my characters. Right now, I'm in a game where I'm playing a tabaxi, which is a catfolk rogue, and his name is Whisper in the Dark. You got to roll the R's, and so you have some fun with it. I'm always trying to, insert some kind of cat reference to his actions. One time we were fighting outside an inn and we were being attacked by zombies, and I yell out to the innkeeper, prepare us a fancy feast.
I optimize. I don't optimize very well because I suck at it. I find some cool thing I want to try and I do it whether it's good or not. But I did optimize in one game I played. It's about 6 months long. We went from level like 5 to 7. And this guy wanted to try out like an isekai anime game with D&D. And I was like, all right, we'll see how that works. And it worked out surprisingly well. It was like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure where like the thing would come out of our body and fight for us. And that was the character sheet. And we were just some guy. But I optimized a champion fighter, human, polearm master, great weapon fighting. And then the other guy was a paladin, and I was way out damaging the paladin. And I'm not sure how I did it, but like that was all I could do. He was a cool character, but
yeah, I was playing a character like that, a polearm master, had the sentry feat, great weapon, and the party got divided. And I was in one room with the dragon, and then the other half of the party was in another room with the dragon eggs. So the dragon wanted to go in the room with the dragon eggs to protect the dragon, but every time the dragon moved, I'd hit him with polearm because I had sentry, 0 movement. So the dragon that lasted about 3 rounds before the dragon breath weaponed me, and that was it.
Yeah, like the character was. It was a very character-driven game, so like we had to make good characters. He was like a American soldier who retired to Japan, because it had to be set in Japan. It was an anime thing, but I wanted to play an American because it was just easier for me because I don't know Japan geography or anything that well.
Yeah.
but and he
Hello?
he had the things that come out of us basically were demons, and we didn't realize it. And once we expelled the demon, we had to actually kill it. My next level was cleric. I took a level of war cleric just because it felt right.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I stopped optimizing at level 7. I'm like, just give me cleric because we just expelled a demon. I'm going to become a cleric.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a good example of natural organic
Mhm.
progression. Like it's okay if you
Yeah.
optimize if your progression is in an optimized fashion,
Yeah.
if it's something that makes sense with the character you're playing. Like for example, I on D&D Shorts, I had heard of a very powerful multi-classing combo, which was nicknamed the Iron Dancer, which is basically an artificer, battlesmith, wizard blade singer
Blade singer.
multi-class.
Oh, boy.
And I decided I want to find an occasion to play that character. And as it happened, we ran a campaign where the character I played was the son of an artificer, of a fighter artificer and a paladin. Had a lot of like familial issues and stuff like that, but also among his uncle was a very powerful and renowned blade singer, and he had a lot of magical potential. And as he started out with his mother, who was the artificer, like he learned a lot about the artificer overall, the class. And at some point he wanted to do his own thing, and his method of doing his own thing was going to his uncle and like teach me about blade singing. And then that's how he got into stuff. And like it took some time to actually get to learn blade singing because it's kind of outside the artificer mindset up to a certain point. But like eventually, so for the first 3 levels he was an artificer, and then starting on level 4 he multiclassed it into wizard blade singer. But it took some time, and right now, like, the drawbacks I see from the multiclassing, especially from fifth edition, I see as like the extra struggle of him having to learn what it is to try to bring together two different kind of arcane systems, and it's really coming out into the character as to how he's playing out. And I still play him like he's very nerdy. He's very into research. He's very academic, and he's trying to always find like a tinkering way or fashion to like make things work. So it's still at the core of everything he does, but the more he advances, because I have in my head to plan to continue in blade singing for
Mhm.
the character in and of itself, because I've outside the character itself I've gotten what I wanted to from the artificer class, but still the way things are progressing, the way the character is built, and the way the persona of the character goes, it just makes sense because we are tackling these new threats. We have to like gain more power. We have to really search everything that we can find, and it's not something that I could do as an artificer, and it's not really something that I can progress into. But also, there's a really large elven tradition to blade singing, and in the modern times where we're playing, blade singing has extended to other races where they have their own style, their own schools, and he came to invent his own way, his own style of blade singing, and it is being repurposed because my DM is an absolute genius. But like there are many old practitioner of the blade singing style of wizardry that eventually look at my character and like, you're an abomination. What is this nonsense that you're doing? Like, why do you incorporate like arcane implants to like, you shouldn't you be using your core magical knowledge to be able to supplement your things? I'm like, well, I don't have the same thing as you, but I'm inventing my own thing and it works. So why do you have to? So there's this whole clash of like,
Deep
it
role play.
shouldn't work, but it does, and
Yeah.
I'm making it work.
Well, you have a good
That's
rationale
the
for what you're
inventiveness of it.
doing with your whole family members being, your uncle is a blade singer or whatever.
Mhm.
So
I
it's
just
See,
want
a
and
to.
rationale for doing it.
I never had that. I never had that in my games. I basically banned blade singing within about 3 games back in the 90s,
Uh-huh.
because everybody was like, "Oh yeah, and I'll get +1 to this, and I'll get +1 to that, and see, I can attack 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 and 3." Nobody was talking about their uncle
Yeah.
or their cousin or their rationale or nothing like that. No, these guys were all just like, okay, and if I take that and I take that and I become this, and if I take a forest elf instead of a wood elf, oh my god, you know.
Yeah,
Oh,
And I was just like, you know what, blade singing, it just makes no sense to me, or it's out. And that was on my world and my game, and that was it.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh shit, Jeff doesn't allow blade singing.
Yeah, some
You
people
know?
will hate you for out banning anything that's in a book. Like, oh, that's official. You can't ban that.
Yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I can.
yeah,
unofficial
yeah.
at this table.
It's
All
my
right.
game. But you know, if somebody would have sat down with me and did what Francois said,
Hmm.
I'd be like, let's check it out.
Hell yeah.
Let's try it. You know, but nobody in my games at the time when blade singing was a thing ever did that because it was all ooh plus one 2/3 third level extra spell bonus spell and, you know, and I was like, okay, never mind.
yeah,
It's the
no, and
same reason I
especially
never got into champions.
Yeah,
It's gaming accounting. It's like I'm looking to play a character personally. This is only personal. I'm looking to play a character with motivations, a story, and okay, some powers, and I'll figure out what I can do with them. I'm not looking to do, like point accounting to build the most optimized power
and
on my sheet.
3.5 was crunchy in numbers. It was
Hmm.
yeah.
That's
And
why
I had one of my best friends in champions do a head. He made a skull
he was just a skull.
because of all the things he could save and all the things he could do. All he needed was a skull. And it's like, you know, and everybody was mad, like, you could do everything. And he's like, dude, I'm just a skull. He knew, but, you know, I'm just a
Telekinesis, and I've
skull.
got
You know, yeah, I got all of this, but I'm just a skull. What are you mad about? And other people were like, you know, ripping character sheets. Never mind, I don't want to do this. You know,
yeah.
let's
I'm
go play
gonna
Guardians.
get into a Champions game here soon, and I just got the book recently, and I'm just reading through it. I'm like, this sounds a lot like Mutants and Masterminds, but the numbers are just 3 times as big.
Mutants and Masterminds. The thing I really love about that system when I tried it was, especially I think third edition is the one I played, is that it almost challenges you to break the system,
Hmm.
but because it is made in such a way that there are certain limiters defined on your power level, you can't ever really break the system up to a point because you have to balance your 2 hit versus your damage output. So
Hmm.
you have to like if you want to have a character who's very accurate and almost always hits, they're almost never going to be doing a lot of damage. And
Yep.
conversely, if you're doing a character was like, well, my damage is like I do plus 20 damage on my d20, and my damage is piercing, so it ignores immunity and this and that and this and that, but I have plus 1 or 2 to hit, I'm not gonna hit squat. So it's just like, so it's this whole balancing act that happens, and there's always like a maximum bonus you can do to any of your given skills.
Yeah.
Um,
But
that I
the
really like about.
the ultimate balancer, the ultimate arbiter, is still the GM. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because like who I think it was Jeff that said it, just because it's in the book doesn't make it law.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, no, this character is game breaking. I can't let you do this. Okay, can we scale this back? Can we bring? Okay, maybe you can bring that up, but scale this back and work with the player to, make a less broken character. In the bad sense, I like broken characters in the good sense. I mean, they're, my nom de guerre, Midnight, couldn't hit shit. Kept getting hurt by his own actions. And it wasn't a character built that was not powerful. He was powerful. He just was terribly, terribly clumsy. Couldn't roll worth crap. But if he's like too effective, too this, too that, and it's not so bad if the player is humble about it. Honestly humble.
Yeah.
But when it's like, oh well, I couldn't hit.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I know you built the ultimate combat monster, but this happens to all of us.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever had a player on your table, either as a fellow player or as a DM, who suffered from the main character syndrome?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes.
As a DM, I've seen it. Yeah.
I just want to say real quick to Francois. Ironically enough, one of my best campaigns I ran online, I had a character who made it half orc, who was adopted by a dwarf mercenary who, like the mercenary clan had like wiped out the orc clan that he was a part of, because in my setting, orcs are more or less like Native. They're very similar to Native Americans. So he found him as a baby, and he couldn't bring himself to harm him, so he hid him away. And then he left. He left. I'm retiring. I'm going to go become a blacksmith. So he left the mercenary company, and they raised the orc as his son, the half orc as his son, and it turned out to be one of the best characters because he's like, well, since I was raised by an orc, can we ditch like the orc languages and take dwarf? Because I was raised by a dwarf. He took like the dwarven starting feats. Basically he took the dwarf starting abilities and skills, racials, languages and stuff, and we applied them over top of the half orc. When he would talk to other players, he would use dwarven expressions. He would act like a dwarf. He was shocked when other dwarves would talk down to him. He's like, "What do you know?" And but it ended up being one of the, and it wasn't just a comedy thing. He had a lot of depth to his character,
That's
and
cool.
eventually he ended up it was 5th edition, and he ended up multi-classing into a homebrewed dwarf only class. But it was, it's just so it worked. It was great. And it was just funny because you're like, well, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a backstory that makes sense at the end of the day, it's quite all right. And ultimately, if you're playing it for like the intricacies of what it's like to live to be like the whole nurture versus nature kind of thing. Like I was born an orc, but I was raised by dwarves, and I didn't know any other life than a dwarvish life. And I was raised by a dwarven blacksmith and a dwarven culture and everything like that. And the clash of like every dwarf is going to recognize an orc, and in dwarven culture, there's a very like ingrained hate for orcs in general, so there's going to be that's going to be at play. But then he never grew up as an orc, so he doesn't know why people hate him. So it's the good old black duck kind of trope. But it can be very interesting to play around, and if you make it interesting like that, it's quite fine. But if you're selecting like I'm going to be selecting the orcs because they get a bonus to strength, and it was especially the case in 3.5. Conversely to like D&D's 5th edition, where basically you can choose any race and choose whatever bonuses you want, because they more emphasize on the nurture type of situation more than the nature.
Well, there's no
I don't like that new lineage stuff. I prefer the racial or species now.
That's the thing. Is theoretically no one's forcing you to play that way.
Yeah.
I do like Josh, your premonition about making the orcs indigenous, because now they're all Mexican. So that's a good thing. And I'm proud of that.
I saw that. Yeah.
No, my it's funny because that homebrew setting, it's my biggest homebrew setting. Like I've used it 15, 16 campaigns, literally 100 players, because remember I'm online. And I fleshed out the world, and I was like, I was thinking about it, and I was like, I kind of wanted to make the orcs. I didn't want to make them sympathetic, but I like Native American history, and I like the fact that when you get into Native American history, there's 10,000 different tribes, like legitimately 10,000 different tribes. And you can go through and you can find tribes that were very agricultural, like they actually agrarian. You're right. Versus tribes who were very nomadic and did hunting and like the culture is so diverse. And I thought, what if orcs were kind of like that? What if there were orcs that, because they lived out in the plains, that's how they lived. They hunted these great beasts that are out in the plains, and they did this. And the orcs that lived more in the swamp actually grew a lot of like tree funguses and stuff like that, and lived off the land.
Well, there's a lot of D&D that points to that direction of orcs being very tribal in nature and having clans and having different.
It's the old Klingon problem. What about the Klingons that aren't on starships? What are they like?
Yeah.
Well.
There's got to be Klingon farmers. There's got to be Klingon doctors. There's got to be Klingon sewer workers.
Yeah, I mean, and I did that with all the races, and it's very funny. And where I started to get people crazy going after me were my gnomes, because there's there's two types of gnomes in that world. There are free gnomes, which the free gnomes basically are gnomes that grew up away from like the gnome homeland. right? Which the gnome homeland is a giant walking spider in the ocean. It's a giant mechanical continent that walks.
Oh wow.
Those gnomes are patterned. They're the authoritarian, like they're very Nazi, like they're Nazi gnomes.
The fascist.
Oh, they're fascist gnomes.
Well, they're not.
That's weird.
It's very hard to describe because like I mixed a lot of ideologies in them, but they want to conquer the world. They believe that they're superior and they should conquer the world.
Oh God, it's the
And they use steampunk based weaponry. So they use because the artificer, once the artificer got at it, it was like, you know what, I'm gonna have fun with this. So yes, they use rifles, they have tanks, and the players going from, we're in this part of the world where it's very medieval fantasy, right? We're in this part of, like, they were in this kingdom that really doesn't like magic, but they have alchemists. And like I took are you familiar with the shifter race in 5th edition? The guys who kind of, those are exclusive to that kingdom because they basically take soldiers and then experiment on them to turn them into shifters. Because they're because their biggest enemy are this Magiocracy that are in another part of the world. Well, suddenly these two warring factions that are like have this Cold War going on have to contend with this giant continent coming out of the ocean and plotting down and starting to wipe out all the free, and the players went from, okay, we're in this medieval fantasy, we're fighting with magic, we're riding griffins, this is great, to what the hell, they're shooting at us with, anti-aircraft guns and
subverting expectations.
But they loved it.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the kobolds in that game, the player can know, he's like, what, you haven't really wrote anything about the kobolds. He's like, I really like kobolds, I want to play kobold. So we made this whole thing that kobolds used to live with the gnomes. But the gnomes basically, the gnome leader essentially blamed it. I know, again, this is kind of horrible, blamed them for all the bad stuff that was going on in their society and exiled them and started conquering the kobold little islands and taking their resources and enslaving them. So his kobold artificer actually became a freedom fighter who hated gnomes. Like he was literally kill on sight. Like if he's seen a gnome, it's like, hey, they go into this tavern and he sees them. Then eventually he did kind of get tempered out where, okay, it was like you remember the barbarian from 2nd edition, how as they gained levels, they could start associating with magic users, like associated with the clerics, and that's how he was. He started to understand that there were freedoms. There were gnomes that had no association with the Nazi gnomes, and so he started to be like, I don't trust them, but I'm not going to shoot them in the head when I walk into this tavern.
If I was playing with the kobold, I 100% would have made a gnome.
We did have a gnome player who, for a long time, used an illusion to make himself look like a goblin because he didn't want to get shot. He was scared. He did not want to get shot. And when they found out, it was a great RP moment because it's like, you've been lying to me this entire time. It's like, well, yeah, I didn't want you to shoot me. But he's like, how many times have I saved your life? How many times have I proven to you I'm your comrade? But it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
That reminds me of a LARP moment me and my wife had with somebody from Canada, actually. The post-apocalyptic zombie game. Yeah. The post-apocalyptic zombie game, it has scions. There's no magic, but there's psychic powers. And a lot of the people from the One Canada game some of them hated scions, but there was an entire religion that hated scions. My wife was the leader of that one in the Pittsburgh game, and she was a scion. So the one girl from Canada just hated them for some reason, and was the leader of my religion, which is the television religion. So I was a Super Saiyan, but I was a scion. And she knew that and kind of kept me at a distance. She found out my wife was a scion Sunday morning before game off, 10 minutes before game off, and freaked out. And my wife's like, I'm like, oh, I can do that. And I start running after Dodger. I'm like, Dodger, come back here. What are you doing? What are you doing? Memory lapse. Hey, what's going on?
Well, gentlemen, we've been talking for over 2 hours at this point.
Yeah.
So it's been great. And thank you very much for making this a success. But I think we're going to have to call it wraps.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Let's hope we can do it again, maybe soon, and see if we can get some more people in here to, shake up the conversation a bit more and add new blood. I'll go around the table. Jeff, I believe you got a game you want to pimp?
Oh well, yeah. I didn't bring one with me, but yeah, Dicey Tales. It's a pulp game, and it's out there. I got it on Amazon now, so it's on
Oh, excellent.
Amazon. I got it on, and the Amazon the soft cover on Amazon is really nice, um, compared to, and it comes a lot faster than the one on RPG Now or
Yeah,
drive through RPG. I'm not too old
yeah,
in RPG Now.
same thing.
Drive through RPG takes forever to get, but
Hmm.
it is what it is. Until the first, it's still $25. Then on the first, it's going to go up to the full price. I just did an introductory thing for
Oh,
it,
excellent.
and yeah, it's a pulp game built with the Barbarians of Lemuria engine. And so, if any of you guys know about the Barbarians of Lemuria, it's career based and good story. You know, when we were talking about the romance and all of that stuff, that with the pulp, it's really fade to black,
Hmm.
because
Yeah, it's the genre.
when we're talking about investing in romance, you're talking about a kiss at the end of the whole thing. You
Hmm.
know, that's your payoff. And so anyway, uh, Dicey Tales. It's at Amazon or it's on drive through. And if you like it, hey, that'd be great if you'd pick a copy up. Thank you.
So I've actually got a copy. I was on the Kickstarter, so I backed and I got a copy, and I think it's really good. I enjoy it quite a bit.
Thank you.
Francois, you have anything you want to say? Anything you want to pimp? Anything anywhere anyone get a hold of you if they want to?
I just want to pay a big shout out to my friend on Twitch, RP Gablin, or Gablin as he's currently known. He's been a very close friend of me for quite some time. I don't personally have any merch or anything like that to pimp. I'm
That's
just a
fine.
very good enthusiast of anything role playing game, and I hope to be here again to discuss further about my favorite hobby.
Okay, perfect. Josh?
Actually, I'm pretty good. I don't have to, I'm not very interesting, so I don't have a lot going on. Um, Mostly, just I think my final word on everything is just kind of like, hey, this is a fun. The role games are fun. They're supposed to be
Yeah.
fun. You're supposed to have a good time. Don't take them too seriously. Don't get wrapped up in, the real world. Escape. Have fun. Just leave everything behind for a little while. Trust me, it's it can do you a world of good. So.
You can clear out the head. Yep. And Jim?
I got nothing. You know, I don't have a game going to that I've published or anything like that. Closest thing is I self-published a short story about, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. It's called Down Jump Blues. It's very traveler inspired.
Yes, sir.
You can download it at Smashwords or Barnes and Noble or Kobo. It's free. It's about, I don't know, 17, 18 pages.
Mhm.
That's about it.
And Travis?
I got all kinds of things. So I do a horror host show on YouTube that I write, film, edit, everything. Um, the character I play is Barry, the movie demon, and that's the YouTube channel name. And you can link to Facebook and Instagram from there. But I also run a marshmallow shop on Etsy that's all horror movie themed because obviously I this is my office. I work in a horror movie set.
Wow.
But yeah, you can check those out. And then I'm trying to start an acting career. But once I get something that somebody can watch that's actually available on the internet, I'll let you know. Because right
Okay,
now we're filming stuff and they're editing a short film I was in a little while ago. So.
Oh,
Let
cool.
me know. We'll get you on to talk about it, and we'll take a look at it.
All right.
All right. So, like always, I hate to say it, but like, subscribe, and tell all your friends about the show. Hopefully, we can draw some interest and keep this going. So,
All right.
thank you very
for
much.
putting us together, Eric.
I really appreciate it. So, good
Mhm.
night. Good gaming.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
You guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, thanks.
are we
Thanks for
okay? We're out. Hey, man, thank you so much for this. I really appreciated it. Had a good time.